Make one mistake, won't make another. I think they're all memories from the past. I came home late, after 9 o'clock at night, and found that my loving wife was not at home. She had left no message and left nothing for me to eat. This was not the first time she had done this. I realized it wasn't the last time. Was I angry? Well, no, not anymore. I knew something was going on a long time ago. Oh, I was probably angry, or should have been, at least at first. But what's that old saying? We learn to adapt, or we learn as we go along. See, here's what happened. My name is Chase Royster. I am 26 years old, only 185 centimeters tall, and weigh about 90 pounds. When I was 18, after I graduated from high school, I went to work. Started out as a carpenter, just hammering nails. But I settled down a little bit, made some friends, made some contacts, and took a step forward. About a year and a half ago, I became an independent person. I had some very little money, but I still started living on my own. There are a lot of people, well, not a lot, but enough, who have bought real estate and are looking for someone to build something for them. I'm certainly no Frank Lloyd Wright, but I can build a detached lobby, a 2-story house, or a farmhouse as well as anyone. I'm doing well, yes, really well, and I have friends, subcontractors, who are also trying to get out on their own. It's working for me. Okay, you know about me. Why am I late every night? It's June, the weather is nice, and if I don't do it now, when will I do it? Now about my wife. A haired, brown-eyed, well-built beauty who thought she knew me and my schedule. Unfortunately, she thought she knew a lot of other things too. Here's what happened. Susan, my wife, is 2 years younger than me. We met and dated in high school. I had a crush and thought she had a crush on me too. Who knows, maybe she did. She graduated and we got married. Susan came from a dysfunctional family. She and her younger brother were raised by a single mom who worked 2 part-time jobs to support herself. So Susan had almost no opportunities after high school. We married, and for the first year I continued to hammer nails while Susan worked. You guessed it, at Walmart. We were doing just fine. No kids yet, and we weren't planning on having any until we put some aside for a house. Then Susan had some ideas. She said she wanted to improve herself and that she wanted to go to college. I was all for it, and we got her into a community college nearby. Susan loved it. She decided she wanted to continue her studies and take 4 years of college. Not being very good at math, but being an avid reader, she chose something in psychology. She said that with a degree in psychology, she could get a job in the local government or at some school helping people, preferably children. I supported her. I paid the tuition bill, books, and other college necessities. Susan really tried her best. She cut back on her hours at Walmart and then quit her job altogether to maximize her time for classes and studying. It worked. A college education is usually 4 years long. Susan finished it in 3.5. Everything looked good, and actually great. I mean, everything seemed good to me. Susan at some point started coming up with other ideas. Is anyone surprised? Since this all came to light, I remember reading about it. I read about it on the internet and in several books. I happened to purchase additional materials from the public library and my local bookstore. Come on, I may not have graduated from college, but that doesn't make me stupid. Around my last year of studying with Susan, I started picking up on subliminal cues. The usual stuff. Anyone who's ever been there knows what I mean. Eye-rolling, stating a fact or evasive answers to legitimate questions, dismissive remarks, condescension, and what I would call hypercritical behavior. Who was Susan trying to deceive? She gradually came to believe that through a few college courses and some coursework, she had gotten smarter and outgrown the man she once loved, but who was still her source of income. I've been watching her. I didn't pay attention at first, but when she got worse, I got angry, but realized pretty quickly that my anger was for nothing. I was only internalizing it anyway. Then my anger turned into sadness. Sure, I loved her, but I was young. If she got apartment fever and wanted to leave, I would be sad, but I could handle it. That's probably all that happened. So far, I've just been talking non-stop. I'll try as much as I can to tell you about how things finally started to fall apart. It was fairly recently, maybe a year ago, on a Tuesday night. I got home late and Susan was there waiting for me. She was sitting at the kitchen table in our first rented house, the one in which I was refinishing floors while doing equity construction. I walked in the door and saw her. She started, "Chase, I know you're tired, but we need to talk." I knew we would. I even knew who my nemesis was. I pulled out a chair. It's all used furniture. "Okay, honey, how are you doing?" "Chase, I know we're married, and I know I promised, but I'm miserable. I want to start dating other people, other men." That was awesome. I expected her to ask me for a divorce, but she was just running around saying she wanted to date. Did she think I was some kind of fool? Some kind of wuss? I sat for a while. I was tired, really exhausted, and I was going to do something like what she had in mind, and if we did, she would cry, and I would just get pissed off. It didn't make sense. I needed to answer, but first I had to get a grip on myself. For about 5 minutes, I just sat there, drumming my fingers on the table and staring at her intently. It had two effects. It helped me keep my composure, and it scared her. I waited, and sure enough, she couldn't take it anymore and said, "Oh, I don't mean love or anything like that. I just want to get away. You realize I've met people who have the same interests as me. Some of them get together and have, well, group discussions, intellectual pursuits, intellectual activities, group discussions." That was silly. There were no group discussions and there were no groups of people. It was one person, a psychology professor, not a professor, a community college professor. I knew him and had met him once or twice. Nice guy. His name was Ryan Fletcher. He thought he was handsome, and I guess he was. He was about my height, but he played sports, jogged, belonged to a sports club, and he wore custom-made clothes, drove a sports car, if that's what you call a late-model Mustang, a sports car. He drank wine and mixed drinks, and I didn't. I hadn't drunk anything since high school, not even beer. Come on, Susan wasn't my first girlfriend. There were others I thought I loved too, especially one in particular. But I thought Susan and I had something. I thought I was moving toward having a big house and children of my own. I would love to have a little girl who looked like Susan, and maybe a couple boys who looked like me. I thought that's what all people wanted. I thought that's what Susan wanted. I guess so. Becoming impatient and maybe a little cautious, she looked at me more closely. "I don't mean I want to leave you, Chase. I love you. I really do. I mean it. I still do. I just want to be outdoors more, do other things, diversify, be more cosmopolitan." I listened. That word, cosmopolitan, was Fletcherism. I'd heard him use it. Finally, I answered, "Do you want a divorce? Is that it?" That was it. I dumped it on the table. I thought she'd either jump on it or leave it lying there and sniff it. She decided to let it lie there. She leaned back in her chair. Yes, I caught her at it. I could see her getting agitated. She turned pale and then blushed. No, I want to stay married. I don't swear. My mom and dad raised me right." I said, "You just want to make love to Ryan Fletcher, don't you?" This time she was blushing to the roots of her hair. No, I'm loyal to you. I'll stay faithful. I just want to be out in public more, to meet new people." She hesitated. She realized I knew more than she thought I did. "Why did you mention Mr. Fletcher?" "I thought, Mr. Fletcher, isn't it? I bet it was Ryan or Ryan Honey when it was just the two of them." I yawned and stretched. "Look, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. You decide what you really want and tell me tomorrow night," I added. "Why don't you call your lover Ryan if you need any advice?" Then I continued. "Oh, and no love tonight. You're probably fed up anyway." I got up and went upstairs to go to bed. I assumed she followed me later. I don't remember falling asleep right away. Well, not exactly immediately. I thought about stuff for a while. The next morning I got up at my usual time and she was already in the kitchen. She had made coffee. I rarely ate breakfast. More often than not, I stopped at Dunkin' Donuts, bought a scone and a cup of something else on the way. Susan had never disrupted my routine before, so I wasn't expecting anything this morning. She always made me lunch and that was nice, but nothing more than that. This morning I was right and wrong. I went downstairs and she was awake and waiting for me. She said, "Look, honey, I was wrong about what I said last night. I want to take it back. Let's pretend I didn't say anything. I'm happy with you. I don't care about anything else." She stepped forward. I think she expected a kiss or a hug, which was unlikely. I gave her what I hoped was a careless smile. "Never mind. Will you be home tonight?" She became very serious, feigning sincerity. Of course I'll be home. Walking out the back door, I rephrased what I had said the night before. Good. Well, talk it over with Ryan and you can tell me what you come up with tonight. And I walked down the driveway to my truck. As I was leaving, I heard her say outside the door, "Not seeing anyone, and certainly not Ryan." I just turned around and waved as I got into my truck. Who was she trying to fool? On the way to work, I began to ponder. Now I think it's not a good idea to do this before work, as so much of the job depends on neatness and safety. Reflection can get in the way. Nevertheless, it was a cool 40-minute drive, and I figured I could do some thinking, and then put things into perspective when I got to work. I'm not an engineer, but I can think analytically. I narrowed it down to 4, maybe 5 topics. First, I had pride. I always thought I was enough for Susan. Coupled with that, I think I had faith in her maturity and self-awareness. If I wasn't enough, and I don't think about love, hell, I'm only 26, no problem with that, then it was something else. Heck, sexually, Susan could use some help. That's another story. Of course, it had to be that college mystic guy. Guys like Fletcher were sophisticated, and I was a simple carpenter. It reminded me of the old Matt Damon movie, Good Will Hunting. There was a scene where Matt alone used a college kid in a bar, but in that movie, Minnie Driver saw through the falseness. In my case, Susan was too immature and too keen a star to see the difference between the tinsel that was Fletcher and what was in me. It probably pissed me off that she couldn't see that, but there was nothing I could do about it. Worse, if she didn't see it now, she never would. It hurt. I loved Susan. But I realized that no matter how it ended, if not now, then someday she would leave with someone behind my back. Now, secondly, what she said, and obviously what she was doing emotionally, if not physically, made me feel incredibly sad. I hated to admit it, but last night, lying in bed alone, and this morning, it was like I was watching someone slowly fade away, dissolving into the distance. They get smaller and smaller until they are no longer visible. I think it's like death. It was getting farther away. What Susan and I had was dying. I saw it, and I felt bad. Third, I think there was some anxiety about what others would think. I thought about it, thought about who it might matter to, and immediately dismissed it. I liked her mom and younger brother, but it would be their loss, not mine. My parents and brothers would be concerned, but once they knew what was going on, they would calm down. The only people left would be my coworkers and friends. I don't care about them. If it came to divorce, which it probably would, they wouldn't take sides, and even if they did, it wouldn't matter. Then there was the financial issue to deal with. We didn't have much money, and we didn't have children, but in the event of a divorce, my new business could require me to pay some form of alimony, at least until Susan got back on her feet. I didn't like the way that sounded, but I figured there were ways around that if I could find the right lawyer. And finally, what about my personal well-being? I mean, I'd be heartbroken, of course. Heck, I've already been grief-stricken, and I'd be lonely too, at least for a while. Then again, though, no, maybe I wouldn't have. I married Susan because I loved her, but I had other girls. There was one Ginger McAllister. I proposed to Susan, but Ginger came second. Even better. During the time I was married, Ginger had been married and divorced. I not only thought I knew she was married because I was married, she jumped into bed with the other guy without a second thought. I wondered if she ever thought about me when she was in bed with her husband. I bet she did. I know I thought about her. Ginger was a nurse at the local hospital. She had a job and had warm feelings for me. I knew she wasn't dating anyone and she was single. I had a good alternative and probably the best choice. That's the way it goes sometimes. So I showed up for work, had a successful day, and headed home. When I got home, Susan was there. She had made a delicious dinner, and we ate. After dinner, I brought it up. "Well, Susan, what have you decided?" She reached out and took my hand. "I love you, Chase. I'm sorry about what I said. It was stupid. I guess I just wasn't thinking." "Then," I said, "these group discussions and seeing other men are off the table." "Oh, Chase," she began, "I never meant anything like dating. I meant socializing with other men in group discussions. I didn't believe a word of it. She and Fletcher had thought of something, but I didn't want to cause trouble. They would. I said, "Look, Susan, you have a degree in psychology. Soon, once you get a job, you're going to use it to help people. I don't want to get in your way. If group discussions, or whatever they're called, group seminars, will help you get better prepared and maybe get a job, then you should go for it." "Is that what you think?" she asked. I gave her what I hoped was an approving but thoughtful smile. "If you think it's a good idea." She crossed the distance between us and climbed into my lap. "I don't think I need to do something like that, but thank you for blessing me. I love you so much, darling." And with those words, she kissed me soundly. Honestly, I thought I'd launch. Now I bet she could go jump into bed with Fletcher without me knowing about it. I moaned, "Look, honey, I'm very tired, and there's a truckload of supplies coming for me early in the morning. Would you mind if—" Susan wrapped her arms around my neck. She kissed me softly on the lips. "No, honey, we can wait." And then I realized, from now on, all I had to do was find a way to catch her. I stood up, kissed her again, and whispered, "Okay, sweetie. I love you too." With that done, I went to bed. For the next few days, all weekend long, life went pretty much the same way. I'd come home after sunset, go straight to bed, get up at dawn, and work hard. All the while, business kept me busy. For one thing, Susan never found a job. I was sure she and Fletcher had made love while I was at work, and equally unpleasant was the thought that what I thought I once had was gone. I assumed that sooner or later I would have to pull myself together and do something about it. In the end, I decided to make up my mind. I made one hard and fast decision. I was sure they were meeting somewhere, I just didn't know where exactly. If they used my house, I decided I would pick Fletcher's brain. If they used his apartment or motel or some college office, I wouldn't be half as worried. In the same vein, I appreciated the fact that it wasn't Fletcher they were talking about, but Susan. Sure, it was Fletcher, but if it wasn't him, sooner or later it would have been someone else. Oh, Fletcher was a boorish, scumbag, tough frat boy who easily found a job at a small college out of nowhere, but he wasn't the problem. There were a few things I needed to figure out. First, I called the lawyer and set up an appointment and a plan of action. Then I looked in the local directory and found Fletcher's address. Then I looked at his credentials, a master's degree in psychology. After all, it wasn't much, was it? Susan's car, her little Nissan, had a GPS. I decided to use it to track her movements. I could keep track of her without taking time off work. Susan also had a cell phone. I could connect to it and read all her messages. All I had to do next was gather some data and wait for a favorable moment. When I hired a lawyer, he explained that if we could get Susan to sign the divorce, I would probably have to pay something, but I could keep her out of my business. Otherwise, he said, I could just declare bankruptcy and start over after the divorce. I know that's an oversimplification, but it sounded right to me. Heck, I heard one guy started over 4 times. I could do it once, and the only person I would fire would be myself. That wasn't exactly true. A few guys might have gotten hurt. Keeping track of Susan's actions was easier than I thought. She left the house every day around 11 o'clock and either headed to the community college or straight to 13710 Maple Crest. The Maple Crest neighborhood was home to Ryan Fletcher's apartment. He lived on the 3rd floor of an apartment building that was part of a complex built in the 1970s. It had once been a beautiful neighborhood, but it had changed considerably now. I wondered if Susan realized what she was getting into and who she was messing with. Given his qualifications and what I had learned about college salaries, this Fletcher was probably on the low end. He was probably making about half of what I was making. Worse or worse for Susan if she wasn't careful. Of course, it was a stupid thought. By then I was on the rise, and Mr. Ryan Fletcher was probably close to his peak. Come on. I looked around, and Susan's choice of profession wasn't so much bad as it was pointless. There were ponds of psychologists with Susan's level of training, and Fletcher was only a notch above her. In a way, it only made me feel worse. Susan wasn't stupid. She should have realized that Fletcher's prospects weren't so bright. Was she really in love with this guy? And if so, was she so deeply in love that she was willing to give up the comfortable life I could provide for what was at best a life of noble poverty? Was I really that bad? No, I didn't think so. I believe Susan was in love with a concept, an idea. Instead of wintering in the Bahamas, which of course is an exaggeration, or maybe enjoying trips to the big cities for shopping, theaters, and concerts, or just having fun spending all the money I'd make, she'd rather have a cup of coffee or glasses of cheap wine sitting around talking about how gifted and smart they all were. Oh well, the choice is up to her. One useful thing I've gleaned from my electronic tracking is that it doesn't look like they're using our house as a love nest. But there is one unpleasant thing, really unpleasant, that has hurt me deeply, and that is her text messages. I am not and never have been what I would call an overly sensitive or thin-skinned guy. The fact that she grew up with 2 older brothers overrode all of that. But her texts were painful. They really hurt. I've read that the words spoken by an unfaithful lover were rarely true. They may or may not have been, but it didn't matter. The words she'd said to Fletcher they hurt a lot. They were like a knife in my heart. A deep wound through which what was left of my love just drained out. So that brings us back to the night it all started. It was time to pull the trigger. Like I said, I discussed everything with my lawyer. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. If Susan wanted the sheepskin guy, she could have him. I would have moved on. I'd be fine. So before I went to bed, I left a note on the table. I wanted to get this morning over with before I left for work. That's not what happened at all. I was just about ready to fall asleep when I heard the sound of a car and then saw the lights as Susan pulled into the driveway. I looked out the window. It was Susan, and she wasn't alone. I pulled my shorts on over my boxers and crept down the stairs just in time to see Susan and Ryan Fletcher enter the front door. Wow, I thought. What is this? Susan saw me and I cringed slightly. I also noticed Fletcher squeeze her hand, either with mild reproach or as a sign of support, I assumed. Susan looked up at me. I was still on the stairs. She said, "Chase, I'm glad you're still awake." I nodded. "I see you brought a guest." By then, Susan was already holding the guy's hand. "Yes. Ryan and I would like to talk to you." Oh my God, I thought, the chickens have come home to roost. I grinned. Did we win the lottery or something? Susan did her best to portray sincerity on her best and well-rehearsed face. "Chase, please come downstairs. We need to talk." Without saying a word, I slowly made my way down the stairs. Whatever it was, and I pretty much knew I wasn't going to make it any easier than necessary. I got to the point. "Okay, what is it?" Susan replied. "Can we go into the kitchen?" I said. "Sure, why not?" As we entered, I discreetly looked Mr. Ryan Fletcher over from head to toe. He looked like he was expecting something. Trouble, perhaps. I mentally laughed. He really was clueless. We went into the kitchen and all sat down at the table. It was their show, so I waited. After about a minute, Susan started. "Chase, I'm kind of leaving you." Gee, I thought, how is it possible to kind of leave someone? I did my best to keep as nonchalant an expression on my face as possible. Judging by the look on their faces, I think I succeeded. I replied, "How do you want it to happen?" Fletcher opened his mouth. "Susan and I were thinking—" I interrupted him. "Right now, it's just Susan and me. When we're done, you two can pack her things. I'll even help." I looked at Susan. "So how are we going to do this?" She looked surprised and hurt when she said, "You didn't have to tell Ryan that. He's only here to help." Oh, I could have said a lot of things right then, but I remembered the movie The Godfather. Never let others know what you're thinking. As calmly and evenly as possible, I said, "You said you were leaving me. I understand. He's here to help. I understand that too. He can help you pack when you and I are done." Again, my question is, how do we do that? Susan was on the verge of a breakdown, and I remembered my conversations with the lawyer. He said that when the bullet hit bone, Susan might crumple and I might have to push her. "Pride works in 2 ways," he said. Susan said, "I'd like to be able to—" I stopped her. It was hammer time. "I agree," I said. She was surprised. "You agree? What do you agree to?" I replied. "I really want a divorce. I've already met with a lawyer. He's drawn up all the papers. We'll sell the house. We have no equity, so we'll probably lose money, but I'm willing to cover any losses." About the stuff. Most of it is used or old. I have a couple things and so do you. We can pick the few things we need and either sell or give the rest to charity. About the money. If you agree to just let me go, I'll split what we've saved, 60-40, and you get 60. Susan was stunned and just couldn't find the words. That's when Fletcher stepped into the conversation. Susan loves you. She doesn't want a divorce. She just wants to be able to see me and maybe take a few trips. I ignored him but responded to his remark through Susan. I said I wanted a divorce, and then lied. I found someone else. I want to move on with my life. She looked flabbergasted. Totally flabbergasted. You found someone else? I stuck to my story. When I found out about you two, I realized it was over between us and moved on. Now, Susan, will you let me go? Please. It's all because of Ginger McAllister, isn't it? Susan parried. I had her in my hands, as the old side ruins. Susan was angry. I cut her off at the pass. I gave her a sharp kick. Yeah, she was alert again. My answer? I'd rather not say anything. In the tone of a cobra, Susan hissed, Okay, Chase, you got it. Ask your lawyer to send over his papers and I'll sign them. I'm releasing you. I stood up. I'll call him first thing in the morning. I'll personally make sure you get them tomorrow. I assume you'll be at Ryan's. Susan, her shoulders squared, her eyes flashing and her eyes glittering, replied, Yes, I'll be at Ryan's. I said as if nothing had happened. Okay, then. I looked at Fletcher. Maybe we should get going. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. That's when I realized Susan had screwed up. He said, Well, I think... I said, Okay, let's get started, and looked at Susan. You get your toiletries together. Ryan and I will get the rest of your stuff out. After that, it went pretty quickly. Susan took her perfume and soap and put them in her travel bag. Ryan and I took all of her clothes to the car. It was cramped, but we were done in less than an hour. I walked them to her car, fully loaded. He got in the passenger seat. I held the driver's side door open while Susan climbed in. She rolled down the window. Chase, I'm sorry. You know I really love you. I was honest, I know. I watched my wife and her boyfriend drive off into the night. I went upstairs, checked Susan's empty closet, and looked around the room. Everything was the same, and yet at the same time, everything had changed. I glanced at the clock. It was 1:10. I pulled out my cell phone and called Jack Slattery, one of my employees. Jack, I'll be gone tomorrow. Yes, Susan and I have agreed on a divorce, so I'll take care of that tomorrow. Can you take care of everything for me? He apologized, but also promised that he would handle everything himself. I knew he would. Was that the end of it? Well, yes and no. Let me explain what happened next. First, I cried through most of that first night. I owed it to myself and to Susan to cry properly, to spill it out, so to speak. After all, I did love her, and I knew that despite the circumstances, she loved me. But she just didn't have the strength of character to hold it together. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, at least his secretary. I picked up my papers and went to Fletcher's apartment. Susan opened the door. Ryan was still asleep. I assumed she had a lot to go through. I could see that she was crying, too. She didn't even bother to read the documents. She just signed all the places my lawyer's secretary had indicated. 15 minutes later, I left, essentially a free man. What happened next? A great deal! I had the house appraised and discovered that it was worth even less than I thought. Instead of putting it up for sale, I met with my parents, took an interest-free loan from them, and after my brothers agreed, of course we didn't want a family fight, I bought Susan's half. I agreed to leave Susan in my care and pay her phone bill for 6 months. I decided that was enough time to give her time to settle in. She hadn't read any of the materials and didn't know anything about it. So I got away with it. I went head over heels into my work. I worked as hard as I could, and in a short time my results were better than ever. Then another circumstance arose. I needed to attend to my personal life. I went to visit Ginger. Susan was a stunning beauty, brown hair and big brown eyes, great figure, not too good in bed, but stunningly attractive to the eye. It wasn't like that with Ginger. Ginger was certainly pretty, short like Susan, red hair, freckles, green eyes, but that was where the comparisons ended. Ginger was flat as a board, skinny, and her legs were like sticks. Worse, while Susan, for all her promiscuous nature, ended up being quite meek and easy to get along with, Ginger was the complete opposite. I remembered her temper, her outbursts of outright anger, and her tendency toward unexpected violence. One thing I did remember was that Ginger had bouts of jealousy, bordering on rage when she was with me. Yeah, and I'd never have to worry about her playing Fletcher. Did I want to go back to that? The answer? Yes. I realized early on that Susan was, at the very least, boring. Ginger was a fiery volcano that was always on the verge of erupting, especially when we were dating, and especially when it came to me. In fact, as soon as she realized that I had settled on Susan, she almost threw herself at her. I went to see Ginger. God, what a great name for a girl with that kind of looks. I called first. She wasn't thrilled to see me, but eventually agreed. We agreed to have dinner together. I took her to the Olive Garden. I took her hands in mine, and my God, I'd forgotten how gorgeous she could look. Hair braided into a long braid, big green eyes, light brown eyeshadow, long eyelashes, dainty little hands, nails covered in clear nail polish, and the clothes she was wearing were just killer. She was wearing a lime green, silky button-up blouse made of some thin material that made it look like her tiny breasts were just flowing. I mean, rippling like waves lapping on a beach. I swear she wasn't wearing a bra, and the top 3 buttons were undone. The skirt she wore was of the same light-pleated fabric and only came to mid-thigh. As she walked, it simply fluttered around her slender legs. Her slender legs were wearing socks, and her feet were wearing cheap moccasins. Just adorable. And what a face! Heart-shaped, teardrop-shaped mouth, slightly upturned nose, high cheekbones, with a scattering of freckles that stretched across her nose and cheeks like a tiny mountain range. And then she opened her mouth, and I fell in love all over again. Oh, how could I forget the melodic intonations of her soft, gentle voice? It was like a spring morning, like the singing of a songbird, like the joyful lyrical song of a nightingale. She was quite silent until we entered the restaurant and sat down at the table. Then she said to me, "What?" she said. "Have you had enough of this pretty girl and decided to come to me? Back to second place?" The nightingale turned into a hawk. That was good. I liked it. I blurted back, "I did. Now how about this?" She literally touched me. "You know I was already married, so you missed my chance." I remembered that I was Catholic to the core. I didn't take any action when we were dating. I replied, "It's okay. I'll take my time." She still hadn't finished. "There's no turning back this time. A penny a pound." I said, "I take what I can get, even if it's left over." And then it hit me, yes, and she finished me off. "My first marriage was a failure," she said. "This time I want a fairy tale." I was ready. "Do you want to eat first, or do you want to go pick out a ring?" She jumped to her feet, laughing. "Let's go, asshole. We got married in the fall. A grand wedding. Like I said, I'm Catholic, I have a big family and high expectations. I was Methodist, so it didn't matter. She was a beautiful bride. The tiny waif was led down the aisle by a red-haired giant who himself shone like the lighthouse of Alexandria. I've never looked back since. Made one mistake, and I won't make another. So what happened to Susan? Ryan loved her, but he just wouldn't marry her. Poor stupid Susan. She resorted to the oldest and stupidest thing you can think of. She stopped taking the pill, thinking that if she got pregnant, he would marry her. She got pregnant, but he went off to the mountains. Ginger and I see her from time to time. We're not pregnant yet, but we're working on it. Poor Susan. She has a degree in psychology, but she's no good. She's about 5 months away from giving birth, and yes, she works at Walmart. I tell everyone it wasn't my fault. I feel a little sorry for her. She's become like her mom. And me? Looks like it's been happily ever after around here. Yes, indeed, life goes on. The end.